Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Elton, and today I'm going to be speaking about the ongoing government shutdown. So, I chose an article by the Washington Post. It's called Government Shutdown Will Cost the Economy $14 billion. So, you know, already right off the bat, I do notice that the author wants us to see this as an economic issue. She says it's costing the government 14 billion. That right off the bat is a little bit of bias. Maybe not intentional, but I did notice that. And as I was reading the article, the author kind of makes the reader feel a little bit of resentment towards the government and whatever party I guess they're not aligned with, because it does touch on both parties. Says the Republicans are trying to block what the Democrats are trying to push through. So I think it views one side as an aggressor maybe, and one side as a defender. Um, and you can interpret that how you like, but I personally think that this author, is a little bit siding more so with the Democrat side, just due to the fact that her quotes are a little bit more, not necessarily praising, but showing off that the Democrats are trying to do something, right? And so, I got kind of wondering why would you kind of frame it this type of way, right? So I was kind of looking at the language of construction, and I was seeing through these pictures and quotes and images from like experts and everything. I was wondering who owns this company, right? And like the whole thing about online media is so scary because anyone can kind of just change the article and they don't have to tell you necessarily, and the whole meanings can be changed overnight, and no one necessarily looks back at an article that they've read. They kind of read something, repeat it to their friends, and then it goes down the grapevine, etc. And that's one thing that is kind of also a little bit scary when it comes to bias and something like that, is because you could just totally release a biased article and then 2 weeks later change it, and the person that read it afterwards would have no idea about the previous one. Either way, I looked into who owns the Washington Post, and it turns out that that was Jeff Bezos, right? He acquired it pretty recently, and I guess he took over the editorial section. Not necessarily like writing, but he said that he wanted it to include topics about the free market and personal liberties. So he's quoted on saying that. And shortly after, I believe a couple people resigned. I know that does happen, when new people take over, new management. But it's just a little interesting that that kind of personal bias bled through a little bit, and you had some editors and writers leave. So then I got to wondering, how would Jeff Bezos make money off of something like this, right? And so I did some digging, and it turns out the Fed actually uses Amazon Web Services, especially when the government's shut down. So the longer the government is shut down, the more that the Amazon Web Services usage ticks up, and the more money that he makes. So I mean, that's just kind of a direct linkage, as well as all the media companies kind of being in a frenzy and everyone looking online and getting attention from those ads and clicks and stuff. So obviously, he makes money, but I don't necessarily think that this article has a lot of, his viewpoints. I think that maybe the Washington Post as a whole is probably leaning towards a more, free market, a bit of a libertarian idea. I know that Jeff Bezos kind of is a little bit cozy right now with the current president, but, he is a businessman at heart. So at the end of the day, you can play a lot of sides. Um, and that also brings me back to the fact that the Post, it's a for-profit business. So at the end of the day, I don't think that they would let anything too crazy biased kind of wreck their audience, because then they wouldn't really have money. Um, and when I was looking here, I did notice from the author's language that you can kind of tell her embedded viewpoints or her social values just based on the way that she is wording certain things. When she speaks about the furloughed employees, she uses the word the lost money, or the people working without pay, and it kind of makes you wonder what kind of experiences this person had in order to feel this certain way. So I mean, I don't necessarily think that this person, has direct experience. I think they didn't work in government, but I know that they cover government frequently by looking at their page. So I think they definitely share some empathy with the furloughed employees. I certainly do, because I mean, just the fact that this is even happening right now is kind of crazy. She does touch on the food stamps as well as the whole reasoning behind the Affordable Care Act and all that kind of stuff. But it's more presented as a economic issue. So that's the kind of bias that I think this is. I don't necessarily think it's a personal, attacking bias. I think it's more so just thinking about this in an economic light rather than a social one, right? And you know, when I was reading, I obviously got something out of this. I felt a little bit of you know, anger towards our government because um, it's just kind of crazy. And I think that that's exactly what this article wants you to do. I think it's exactly what a lot of the articles want you to do. Is they want you to feel some distrust towards this other party or this other person, so that they can kind of guarantee your vote, right? And I mean, at the end of the day, elections do shape America. So I think that, mass media literacy is very important when it comes to something like this because the media shapes a large portion of the American audience and how they think. And it is very important for us to always double check this kind of thing. And I definitely learned a lot just by looking into, bias and ownership. So I encourage all you guys to do the same. And I hope that everyone has a great week.